Chapter 23, Ancient Ghosts. William's night was getting more and more bonkers. First Santa brought him a real dinosaur for Christmas, and now he was riding on the dinosaur's back through the deserted museum in the middle of the night. What an adventure. William steered the Christmasaurus out into the main hall, an enormous, gigantic, massively impressive room with something wonderful in the centre. It was a huge skeleton, a great diplodocus that was taller than a tree and as long as a train. It was one of William's favourite things in the museum. The Christmasaurus couldn't believe his eyes. He'd never seen anything as huge in his life. Is this what other dinosaurs look like, he thought, as he walked closer to the towering dinosaur skeleton, and saw that at one side there was a display of pictures and drawings of what dinosaurs would have looked like if they had been alive, where they would have lived. It looked so green and hot there, nothing like the Christmasaurus lived. It was dark after hours in the museum, and all the lights were usually illuminated. The displays and exhibits were switched off, and only lights came from the street lights outside, which trickled in through high stained glass windows in streaks of jagged colour. The effect was beautiful, but a little scary, as it fell on the lifeless faces of all weird and wonderful creatures on display, casting long, distorted shadows of skeletons across the marbled floor. William had never felt scared here before, but he was now. He was glad he wasn't alone. As he clung tightly to the Christmasaurus's back, the dinosaur's footsteps echoed around the hall. The echoes seemed to travel for miles through every hallway, every stairwell, bouncing off the ceiling and back to their ears, so that even when they stopped moving, it sounded as if someone was still walking behind them. William kept checking over his shoulder nervously. Surely there was some sort of security guard in the museum somewhere, walking around checking the place. Were the footsteps he could hear and echoed ghost steps of the Christmasaurus, or was someone else in the museum? And now William was the word ghost in his head. If there was one place he'd always thought must be haunted, it was the museum. It was full of ancient artefacts from the ancient around the world, casks of the dead, mummified Egyptian pharaohs that had been dug up from tombs, hundreds of real dead animals on display, from birds and fish to giant ship-sinking squid, from the deep dark oceans and jars full of real animals' eyeballs, and millions of insects in glass display cases. They were all deader than dead, but their ancient ghosts had hung around somewhere, right? It gave William the shudders, and the Christmasaurus must have noticed it too, as he'd started walking on his toes. "Walk that way," William whispered into the dinosaur's ear. They crept along the corridor until they reached a large set of heavy wooden doors. The sign above them said, "Dinosaurs." "Right, let's see what sort of dinosaur you are," William said, and the Christmasaurus pulled the doors open with his head. Once they were inside, William closed the doors behind them. That made him feel a bit safer. This room was packed full of dinosaurs. There were dinosaur bones, dinosaur fossils, dinosaur skeletons, dinosaur paintings, dinosaur facts printed on the walls, dinosaur footprints moulded into the concrete floor. There were dino stuff everywhere. The Christmasaurus tried to take it all in as tears filled his icy blue eyes. William gave him a comforting rub on the head. These weren't the sort of other dinosaurs the Christmasaurus had been hoping for, but they were still amazing. The first dinosaur they saw was a large round robotic model of a Triceratops. As they stepped closer, it automatically switched on, let out a fake digital sounding roar, and bobbed its head up and down repeatedly in its three pointy horns on its head. "Nope, you're definitely not a Triceratops," William said as they moved to the next exhibit. A T-Rex," said William thoughtfully as they approached a tall skeleton in the mighty T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex. Its sharp, razor-like teeth grinned down at them. Even its lifeless skeleton was frightening. "No, I don't think you're related," said William. "Too scary." The Christmasaurus agreed. He wouldn't like to meet that dinosaur, and they moved on to another displays in their search for the one that might be the same as the Christmasaurus. There was spiny Stegosaurus. The Christmasaurus shook his head. "Nope," William cried. "A vicious Viceratops. The Christmasaurus huffed and grunted. Definitely not, agreed William. A breathtaking Brachiosaurus? The Christmasaurus stood on his tiptoes and sighed. No, I don't think so either, said William. And so the search continued, but it began to seem hopeless. I can't seem to find any dinosaurs like you anywhere, William said, puzzled. What on earth could you be? Just then the Christmasaurus saw something over his head and made his heart beat a little hard and fast, and it felt as if they were doing cartwheels in his chest, which was supposed to be called heartwheels. William looked up and saw the little Christmasaurus was gawping at the wonderful winged dinosaur hanging from the ceiling and thought with how gracefully it was flying. It was a pterodactyl, William said. They were flying dinosaurs. The Christmasaurus went all giggly and wobbly and spinning and jumping up and down excitedly. So William stopped flipping off his back. There, hang over the Christmasaurus's head, was proof that the dinosaurs could fly. Whoa, calm down, William cried. They could fly because they had wings. The Christmasaurus looked up and saw the pterodactyl's large wings stretching out either side of his body. Only animals with wings can fly, explained William. But the Christmasaurus knew that it wasn't true. He'd seen 8 animals that didn't have wings, and he'd seen them flying earlier that night, the reindeer. Suddenly, a strange noise broke the silence in the museum. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas, a deep, jolly voice called out. Santa! The Christmasaurus bolted in the direction of Santa's voice, and they were there at the museum. Could it be? The sound led them to a room next to the dino hall in the museum's gift shop. The whole shop was covered from top to bottom in Christmas decorations of all sorts. Tinsel, bells, icicles, baubles, you name it. They had it. But what do you expect? There was where Mr. Trundle worked after all. As they stepped inside, they saw a small plastic Santa, littler than an elf, positioned on a gemstone and a fossil counter. Every few minutes, the tiny fake Santa would robotically wave his hand and chime one of a selection of recorded Christmas messages. The Christmasaurus dropped his head in disappointment. First it was fake dinosaurs, now it's fake Santa. But then he saw something that gave him an idea. Right in the centre of the shop was a large display of Christmas cards for sale. He quickly trotted over and searched the rows of festive cards. What are you looking for? Asked William, completely befuddled by the dinosaur was doing. The Christmasaurus suddenly wagged his tail. He'd found what he was after. He gently slurped up the Christmas card using his slobbery tongue, and the card stuck, and it was like a postage stamp. He hurried back to the room full of dinosaurs and waddled around with the sign that he saw said Stegosaurus. He started chewing and nibbling at the Christmas card in his mouth, dropping bits of cardboard on the floor. Then, when he was done, the dinosaur carefully used his tongue to stick the remaining bits of card over the sign. He stepped back so that William could see what he had said. Christmasaurus, William read. You're a Christmasaurus. The dinosaur wriggled excitedly beneath him and did a little jog in the spot. Wow, I never even heard of a Christmasaurus before. And there's more of you. Are there more of you? William asked. The Christmasaurus stopped his happy jog instantly and shook his head sadly. You're the only one. The Christmasaurus nodded. The one and only Christmasaurus. William explained, stretching his arms triumphantly as his voice echoed around the hall, sounding far more epic than sad. The Christmasaurus suddenly felt happier. Maybe being one of a kind wasn't as bad thing after all. He looked around at all the bones and skeletons, then noticed something on the wall behind them. It was a huge mural of a vast jungle landscape. The painted sky was ferocious, the flaming rocks streaking across it. It didn't look like a nice place to live. That's where you're from, explained William, but the Christmasaurus shook his head immediately. This wasn't where he was from at all. This dry-looking, fiery place was not his home. He quickly carried William back to the dinosaur hall and the Christmassy gift shop again, where he had dozens of Christmas cards and Christmas gifts with pictures and drawings depicting the North Pole. Although none of them were exactly right, they were closer to the Christmasaurus's home than the terrifying mural of the other room. The Christmasaurus picked up